I just wanted to go through a summary of SmartHort 2 and the work we've been doing on lean and labour productivity within a group of horticultural companies. Basically, just a quick reminder of the course objectives. You know, what we wanted to do really is not only teach and go through what the lean principles were, but actually get businesses to actually look at doing some improvement projects within their own operation. So it's very much a combination of theory and practical, so that people not only experience the theory of lean, but actually get to deliver it within their own businesses. So that was the course objectives that we set ourselves against, and that's a bit of a summary of the tools and techniques that we covered with each of the candidates and the participating companies. So getting the companies to pick a process, another process that's fairly crucial to labour and the business itself. So usually one that's quite a labour-intensive process, and process map it. And then from a process map, identify a waste walk. So we used the classic post-it notes to identify what the process steps were, what adds value, what doesn't add value. And then from that, we converted it into a waste walk, which is a summary of the results of the process and the lead times and the distances of each of the elements of the process, distance covered and the time covered, and then summarising that into the total lead time in the process. And then the group carried out a Pareto analysis. So they carried out an analysis of the individual processes and identified the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the waste and the 20% of the steps within that process that contributed to that 80% of the waste. And we just use that as a way of prioritising. So it was essentially a way of prioritising the problems within the process, so we can identify where we needed to focus our efforts to deliver some quick wins. And then from that, we actually produced a prioritisation matrix. So all the problems and all the ideas that the participants had on how to improve the target process, we got them to grade them. So easy and hard, low and high. Obviously, top left-hand side is where you want the majority of your problems to land and the solutions that they came up with, which is basically easy to fix, but high benefit for the business and essentially quick wins. And as part of the course, we covered other problem-solving techniques. So we encouraged the participants to do a fishbone, just a way of analysing problems and the contributing factors to those particular problems. So this is just a summary of the people that completed the course and fed back to us in terms of their projects, and we were really pleased with the quality of the presentations that we got. We got some absolutely excellent presentations utilising those tools that we just went through then. So they used each of those individual tools to identify where the improvements were, and this is just a summary of the improvements, just to give a feel of what the output was. You know, we were very much focused on making some savings during the year itself. So one of the projects generated a 26% improvement in planting speed, which equated to 200 hours of extra capacity, which could be redirected into other parts of the business. The way they went about that was moving trays that were required for the operation closer to the operators themselves to reduce down the amount of distance travelled and the amount of time spent carrying trays. So obvious impact on safety and morale of the workforce by doing that as well. Another project looked at the weeding process, and they achieved a 50% improvement in that particular process in terms of productivity. And the benefits that gave, it made it a simpler process, and therefore it was much easier to train people to do that particular activity. You know, weeding is one of those processes when people are underutilised, when the work's been completed for the day in one particular area of the business. It's where labour tends to move and people tend to move. So making it easy for people to pick up and carry out that activity makes quite a big impact. Another one was on the actual feed process, and what they looked at doing is making the feeding process as simple as possible. So basically what they looked at doing was creating storage for the equipment, making sure all the equipment was properly allocated within a storage unit that was built. So again, people could find things quickly and easily. So a relatively small investment, £6,100, but had a payback of 10,500. So just over 2 years in terms of payback. But also the impact of that would potentially be that they reduced down the purchase of unnecessary stock items. They made it much easier to identify the engineering spares and the fittings that they needed to carry out feed and maintain the feed systems. So that way it reduced down the chance of somebody not being able to find the item and then buying something that wasn't necessarily required. Some really innovative use of videos to analyse picking operations within fruit picking. A common problem that a lot of people identify that they point lean towards is the fact that you've got such big different rates in people that are actually picking the fruit, and also the fact it takes a while to get people up to speed. And because it takes a while to get people up to speed, normally a compensation rate has to be paid to make up the rates to the minimum wage. And in this particular instance, by using videos to identify the differences and then using it as a training method to upskill people, one company managed to see a reduction of 21.4% in that compensation that's paid. But more importantly, they actually managed to see that it upskilled people quicker and therefore improve the motivation of those individuals and then improve the retention of those people coming back to the business in the future. And I think that seems to be a common theme that we're hearing more and more now. I think lean in the past has been used predominantly for productivity. But I think people now are actually seeing and recognising the impact that it can have on improving morale and making it much easier to train people, and then as a result of which making it easier to retain those skills within the business. And with the competition for labour the way it is at the moment, that's definitely something that I'm going to see. I think we'll see an increase in the use of lean to do. Another project was on the potting process, and by introducing a runner to keep the potting machine topped up with peat and make sure that all the pots were being topped up on the potting machine, and making sure that any clean downs in the machine that could potentially cause stoppages were being carried out, and that way it kept the potting machine running as much as possible and cut out a significant portion of the minor stoppages that you can typically get on a potting machine. And they saw a 17% improvement in productivity and a 33% improvement in output from that particular machine. So, quite a significant improvement in performance for some relatively simple improvements that didn't cost a great deal of money to actually implement. And then another activity was on crop maintenance. So they managed to achieve a range of 10 to 20% improvement in productivity on crop maintenance. And again, making it easier to train people up from other departments, so as they moved into that area, they could bring those people up to skill as quickly as possible. So that's a bit of a summary of the projects and the savings that we saw from all the individual presentations. And just adding to that my own thoughts and just pulling out some of the trends that we were seeing. I think people like the fact that we did the delivery this time around through MS Teams. It gave an element of flexibility, so people could see the online content. The training was broken down into smaller chunks compared to SmartHort 1. Although I think if you were going to see the same results that we saw from SmartHort 1, which was a saving of something like £360,000 per year in terms of productivity, I think you'd have to introduce that element of face-to-face. So I think the next time around, or future training programs similar to this, I think it'd be a set of blended activity it'd be a combination of the face-to-face and the online and deliver the optimum. What was pleasing, it was a very chaotic period during 2020 to 2021 for obvious reasons, and it was great to see that the group actually made changes during that period. Relatively small investments. I think the largest investment that's one of 6,100. The rest of them really were just the way people organise themselves. So no capital investment, just some time to make those changes, but they were relatively quick wins. We did have some fallout along the way. So we had 4 companies who completed the course, who identified 6 improvements, and as mentioned, those improvements were really relatively small improvements, but amalgamated across the whole business actually made quite a big difference. And it was really nice to see that everybody that went on the course and everybody that fed back could identify further improvements that they wanted to make within the business. So there's the additional future benefits that the participating companies and individuals will see as they roll this out across the rest of the business in future years. I mentioned that the productivity improvements, the emphasis was on making the job easier for staff and staff retention and skills retention. So that's definitely been a theme. And it was really nice to see that these projects were delivered by team leaders and supervisors within the business. So it taking some of the pressure off the owners and the senior management team, to be able to get this group to be able to identify their own improvements and actually action these improvements. It just takes a little bit of the bottleneck away from the senior management team and spreads out some of the resource required to carry out improvements within the business itself. So I already mentioned about the quality of the presentations. Really clear and concise presentations, put together a compelling case for the improvements. So any of those presentations put through to a senior management team wouldn't have any problem in getting the backing and the investments. In fact, we did get the backing and the investments. So I'm always conscious that we need to bridge the gap in terms of communications between team leaders and supervisors, that middle management team, and the senior management team as well. So what Lean gives you is that common language that everybody understands. It breaks everything down into time and money. So it makes it much easier for the senior management team to do cost-benefit analysis and investment appraisals to give the go-ahead for improvements within the business. And just really finishing off on the fact that I thought there was some really innovative use of videos within the process and within the projects. Using videos to analyse that difference between people who are operating at a much higher rate than other people within the business, and then converting that analysis into a piece of training resource that can be used to train new starters, and then basically get them up to skill in as short a lead time as possible. And I think that's something that most businesses need to look at now, going forward, as a way of not only improving productivity but retaining those skills within the business. So hope that helps. Hope that's of use. Thanks again for those that participated in the course. Really appreciate the involvement and the enthusiasm, and it's been great to continue the correspondence, and please do keep us informed of how things go and how things progress. Thank you very much.